Alrighty, folks, we're here for the final Deadmines card reveal. 4 legendaries have been revealed, and kind of a mixed bag here, I think, but some cool stuff nonetheless. So let's kick it off here with Goliath Sneed's Masterpiece, a new 8-mana 8/8 mech, neutral. Battlecry, fire 5 rockets at enemy minions that deal 2 damage each, and then it says you pick the targets. So number one, that's picking multiple targets off of a battle cry, it sounds like. So that might be some new tech, actually, where you can make multiple selections off your battle cry. So number one, that's kind of intriguing. We'll have to see how that works. As far as actual application of this card, it's basically a big-bodied board reactivity sort of thing. It reminds me a lot of Reno the Relicologist, dealing 10 total damage to enemy minions on board. You can kind of mix and match as you need, which sometimes could be helpful. You know, if Reno the Relicologist, for instance, the old days wouldn't get there, they had 12 health or whatever, there might be one specific thing you want to really target. Goliath here can do that. Alternatively, if there's a bunch of like 3 health stuff out there, it might feel like you're kind of wasting some damage here because each of them are dealing 2 damage. So some ups and downs, not to mention this is an 8-mana card. And although it's swingy on board, it's not the most high output thing out there. So we've already seen the previous 8-mana card that kind of had this like board interactivity with the Maddest Bomber. This feels like it lives in a similar space. I think it's slightly better because you can control it, but I still think it's way too slow for what modern Hearthstone demands for an 8-mana card. Those kind of cards need to be like really game impacting, almost game winning often to really see play. There's almost hardly any 8-mana cards actually being played in Hearthstone at the moment, and I just don't think this one stands out enough or really does a big enough thing, a game impactful thing, that it makes sense there. It's one of those cards, again, that's great in Arena probably. Taking that big, meaty onboard swing in Arena with an 8/8 left behind is awesome. In typical Hearthstone, most of the decks can't just run big things like this that aren't like super, super threatening. So I think this one's going to be only a 2-star card. Moving on here to Cookie the Cook here for Shaman. He's a 3-mana 2/3 Murloc with Lifesteal, and Death Rattle equip a 2/3 Stirring Rod with Lifesteal. So a couple interesting things here happening. A lot of potential life gain bundled into this card. I guess that's because you're eating this soup and it's delicious, making you feel better. It's just fun. So the body itself, not exciting for 3-drop, right? But it has this lifesteal upside. So if you need a little bit of healing in your Murloc deck, sure, there you go. That's an out. Also, Death Rattle with a reasonably solid weapon. I mean, it's a 2/3, right? It's not blowing anybody's mind compared to other Shaman weapons. But lifesteal, again, gives you some life gain. So to me, this feels like the kind of Murloc, that's like a fit in a Murloc Shaman deck, of which, there's still some potential for Murloc Shaman definitely lingering around in Standard. It's not quite there at the moment. I don't think we're getting enough out of Deadmines to like push it over the hump necessarily. Particularly not Cookie the Cook here. I don't think this is good enough to be like, yeah, I gotta play Murlocs. But when Murlocs do show up, I think Cookie the Cook will be an important part of that process. Now, will other Shaman decks want to run this one just as a toss in for some free healing? I honestly don't think so. It's not immediate, right? Both the forms of lifesteal are kind of passive. You just plop it down, hope it gets to attack or take a defensive attack. And then, if your opponent removes it, like it takes 3 turns to get the lifesteal off the weapon. Just so long and delayed for healing. I think normal Shaman decks would just run some other more immediate directed healing than something like Cookie. So, it's one of those cards, like, it's fine, but again, doesn't really stand out a ton. I will go ahead and give this one the 3-star bump just because, Shaman or Murloc decks exist, and this feels like you're going to put it in a Murloc deck at some point. So it's got that angle to be played. It's just not a particularly exciting angle. So next up here, we have Mr. Smite, and this one's a little more interesting, I think. 6-mana, 6/5. Your pirates have charge. So, we got some potential here, right? We like going face in Hearthstone these days. Or, well, I don't really like it, but that's what works anyway. So for the sake of assessment, it matters that this enables cards to go face. In particular, I think a great use case for this is, say you've gotten your Juggernaut down and like Quest Pirate Warrior, and, there's that pirate on board. Sometimes it's not interactive enough, and you can play Mr. Smite, and he's going to give that additional pirate charge. But keep in mind, Mr. Smite himself also has charge, right? He's a pirate. He says your pirates, not your other pirates. So he's kind of like Leeroy for 6 mana. But then if you've got like that post-Juggernaut world, he's enabling even more things. You could play maybe a 1 or 2 mana card alongside this, and you've got yourself a pirate charge stew going. Now, that said, I think Mr. Smite's actually fine on his own. I think a 6-mana Leeroy is still relevant for a lot of decks is a neutral finisher sort of card. Just play this guy and you've got a pretty decently statted minion compared to something like Leeroy, for instance. Not, you know, on curve vanilla stats, but for a charge minion, pretty nice. Still has to be removed and dealt with, but you're getting that 6 damage immediately. You've got this like setup potential as well, or follow up for something like Juggernaut. So all in all, you know, really good on curve, I think, you know, on turn 6, but has that like, you know, you're on turn 9 and you have a couple pirates laying around for whatever reason and you need that extra burst of damage. Mr. Smite can also provide that too. So I think there's the pirate angle. I also think some decks might just run this. I can see like a Face Hunter just running this as a 6/5. We also got just like a bunch of random new pirates in the pool. So a bunch of classes have access to pirates that might just be a natural fit in a deck. And Mr. Smite comes along and is like, oh yeah, this is some free burst damage here for Mr. Smite. So I think because, you know, the effect impacts him and that turns him into this just neutral missile, basically, much like Reckless Rocketeer or Leeroy before him, Mr. Smite becomes a really solid card. I think this is actually a 5-star card that a lot of decks will be able to put in there. So I like Mr. Smite. And then finally here, Edwin's finally a pirate. He's a 4-mana 4/4 for Rogue. Edwin Defias Kingpin. Battlecry, draw card. If you play it this turn, gain +2/+2 and repeat this effect. So really nice, right? Even at a base level here, this Edwin's just a 4/4 draw card. Sometimes you'll be okay with that, right? You just, okay, got a little bit of stuff on board and I really needed some resources. That's great. And then Edwin has this upside. It reminds you a little bit of like Instructor Fireheart, where the more mana you have, the more powerful Edwin sort of becomes, right? Because if you have 10 mana when you play your Edwin down, you're going to draw a card. You're probably going to be able to play that card. Most rogue decks are running very cheap, affordable cards, right? So Edwin's going to then be a 6/6, and you're going to get to draw another card. So, you know, if you have a bunch of 1-mana cards in your deck, you might draw like up to 6 cards, or even like 0-mana cards that Rogue might have as well. So all in all, you know, you might be able to make your Edwin a 16/16 and basically completely reload your hand off the back of a single card. And that's really scary. Like, it's just like a game-turning effect all in one in Edwin by himself. Now, I'll be honest, despite the like crazy high ceiling potential for this card, current rogue lists, you know, I don't know if they're going to want to wait that long to make a card like this impactful. So, you know, if you think about like Garrote rogue stuff, right? They're not trying to get to turn 10. They're trying to end the game like turn 6, turn 7, turn 8 with some crazy Garrote pop-offs. So Edwin may not really fit super well into that deck. I mean, he could be a way to kick off a chain of draws, but also it's a pretty optimized list and, you know, you don't get a lot of value out of Edwin in those key turns. Like 8 mana is a little bit to work with, but still not a crazy amount. And then if we think about like SI7 Rogue, you know, he's not really an SI7 card. He'd be a fine reload. So, you know, he might be fit in that kind of deck, but he wouldn't be kind of centerpiece or core to it. So in other words, I wonder if most rogues have like a faster game plan, and Edwin's the kind of card that might be sort of chilling dead in hand for a while. He also does contest Kazakis, and any decks that want to run Kazakis, this could certainly be a better slot than Kazakis for those decks, but it is at least noteworthy. So all in all, I think this is a really powerful effect, very high upside. I don't actually know if it's going to fit in Rogue today, but that said, future decks will come along. This has so much built into it, so much just draw, so much upside built into it. I still think it's a strong 4-star card. I think plenty of decks will run this. I just don't know if it's that home run 5-star that every deck is going to be fueled by, although it has some potential to be very powerful and frustrating cards like, oh god, they got Edwin, their hand is full and I have this enormous dude to deal with. That could be a pretty scary scenario. So yeah, that's it for these 4 cards. Pretty cool stuff. First 2 are kind of but the final 2 here I think are really rather powerful. So all in all, that's the Deadmines mini set. This stuff comes out tomorrow, November 2nd. So we'll be playing Edwin decks and Mr. Smite decks and so on. So stay tuned for all that. Thanks much as always for watching. Share your thoughts down in the comments below for what decks and cards you're most excited to see and play. That'll help guide me as my deck building processes in the next couple days. So appreciate it. Thank you much for watching. And until next time, game on.